Welcome back to our Wednesday workshops. We're excited that you are here as we kick off this new series all about sacraments and the next generation. Before we get started, we've brought in our subject matter expert today, Sage Garvey, and she is going to kick us off in prayer. Hey, Sage.
Hi.
All
So,
right, could you pray for us, please? Thank
yeah.
you.
Yes, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God, thank you for this time together and for this group that you've brought together to learn more about how we can bring your love and goodness to the next generation in our churches through sacraments. Please be with us, have your Holy Spirit with us, and guide us in all that you want us to do and guide our conversation today. Amen. In the Father, and the
Amen.
Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Sage. Well, we're going to bring you back here in a couple of minutes. But before we get started, I want to say first, introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what parish you're from, so that our team can greet you. And then I just want you to think about something for a second. Here it is. Can you imagine your parish having a thriving next gen program that includes great preparation before the sacraments, great experiences during the sacraments, and then your program continues to thrive and you're continuing to engage kids and families after sacraments? So I just want you to think for a couple of minutes about how that could be, what that would look like, and what that would feel like. And here's what I'll let you know. If you like what you're learning here today, you have got to join us for conference because we are going to have 5 breakout sessions dedicated to the next generation, which is incredible. We've got rethinking sacrament prep. So if you love what you're learning today, you're going to get even more details in that one. There's get teens talking and more. So you guys, there are some incredible experiences. You're going to get to learn from Sage, from Daniel, and the whole next gen team. And we have a special surprise for you today. Actually, there's a couple of surprises today, but the first one is if you haven't registered for a conference yet, we have a special discount code for you. This discount code is Workshop 35. So we're going to put that in the chat for you. But if you have not registered yet, it is Workshop 35 and you will get $35 off when you register for the conference. Now, if you register a team of 5 or more, everybody gets $50 off. So it's still that great deal of 5 or more for $50 off. But we want you to make sure you get to conference so you can experience all of these incredible breakout sessions. And just a reminder, we have workshop worksheets for you, and we'll have some tools for you for week 3. And can you believe this is our last workshop series of the semester? So after week 3 of this one, we won't see you again until September. So make sure to stick around for all 3 weeks. And make sure to stick around for the discussion groups because I did hear that Sage is actually going to be popping into one of the discussion groups today. So stick around and you might get the chance to talk with Sage in just a small group. So think about that. So as we get going here, I would love to have Father Michael share a little bit with everyone today. Hi, Father Michael. Hey, Henry.
Hey, Melissa, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I was just going to add to your introduction there that um, although we won't be seeing them again until September after this uh, after this series, we can always visit with them at the conference in June.
Absolutely. We get to see everybody in real life at the conference, which is exciting. We love those real life experiences. We get those at weekend observations too. We just had some teams deployed the last couple of weekends visiting some parishes all over the country, which is really awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. And the conference is going to be awesome too. We just had a big meeting this morning all about it, and it's so exciting. I'm so excited about it. So plan on that for sure.
Yes, June 1st and 2nd, join us at the conference. You can meet Father Michael in person. Are you going to be signing books, Father Michael?
If you twist my arm, I will.
Okay. All right. I need to remember to bring my original rebuilt book so you can see all the highlights I have in it and
Love
sign
it.
that one.
Love to see it.
All right. Well, I've got some questions for you today. So, the first question is, how can we help families see sacraments as a part of a lifelong faith journey?
Well, I think the basic answer to that question is the basic answer to a lot of conundrums when it comes to parish life, and it's consistent communication. Consistent communication is the key to helping your parish grow in whatever discipleship step you're focused on at a given time. Emphasizing the connection between sacraments and daily discipleship is, first of all, about communication. And that happens, first of all, in the pulpit with the preaching of the pastor. So I've got to be making that connection in a clear and consistent way that people can actually hear. Um, Another thing we do here is offer parent workshops that explain how sacraments build on the previous one in a lifelong journey of faith. And we apply some creativity to these workshops. For instance, um, in some instances, they're at dinner time and they provide dinner. And that sounds kind of silly and simple, but it works. People like to have dinner together. So you can make the workshops more attractive and attract more of the parents, and maybe they approach them with some enthusiasm too. Um, and in smaller parishes, another method of instilling this kind of appreciation of the sacraments and discipleship is pairing parents with other parents as kind of mentors and mentees. That can be difficult in a larger parish, but in a smaller parish, it can work very effectively.
Oh, I love those ideas. And I love the idea of feeding them dinner. Who doesn't love a free dinner and having the opportunity for somebody else to prepare their meal for them? That would get me as a parent. I love that. I see other hands too. That would get you too. I love that. Well, Father Michael, how can we keep families involved in the parish after sacraments? That seems to be a big burning question for a lot of people.
After the sacraments, I think the key is small groups.
Yes.
Small groups for parents, small groups for teens, small groups for kids. Um, they just work. And if you need any help with that, we just happen to have a new book out on the market all about developing small groups in your parish. It's a question of engagement. You know, lots of times the parents have checked the boxes when it comes to the first three sacraments, the sacraments of initiation, baptism, First Communion, and confirmation. And they check those boxes and then they kind of feel like, well, they've done their duty and they're done. So the challenge is really engagement. And small groups is the method that we found most consistently and effectively helpful.
That's such a great idea. Any final thoughts on sacraments before we welcome Sage and Daniel?
Well, I think that it's easy from a pastor's standpoint and from a parish staff standpoint to become frustrated with some of the attitudes that we encounter out there when it comes to sacraments and parents and kids, grandparents, everybody gets into the mix. Um, but don't allow yourself to become frustrated. It's part of the challenge of what we do to effectively engage parents and families in the life of the parish and the steps of discipleship, along with preparation for the sacraments.
Definitely. Well, Father Michael, Henry, thank you. We are going to bring you back when it is time for Q&A. So thank you. And everyone, just a reminder throughout, if you have any questions, just pop those right in the chat and we will make sure to put those in for our Q&A session. Well, Now it is time. We are going to welcome our subject matter experts. And I said I had a couple of surprises. Here's my second one. So you knew Sage was coming, but you probably didn't know that Daniel is here today too. So if you were here at all with us last year, Daniel was our subject matter expert. He is the Next Gen Director at Church of the Nativity. So he is also going to chime in with some of his learnings today too. So hey, Sage. Hey, Daniel. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, excited to be here.
Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about that first piece of sacramental prep. This is before sacraments. So, how does your parish prepare children, teens, and their families for the sacraments?
I'm basically in charge of First Communion and First Reconciliation. And so for that, that looks like, as Father Michael was saying, getting them involved in a small group for a year-long program, as well as getting them prepped for our sacrament program, which is an addition, kind of goes hand in hand with our small group program. So we also have them do a retreat and workshop / rehearsal for reconciliation in the fall, and then a workshop and retreat for communion in the spring. And that's kind of like the general overview of the program for getting them prepped for that.
Love
And
that.
you have a take home that they get to bring
Yes.
from the retreat too. I think that's a big part. We give them a few weeks and a book, and we have built board games. It's Sage's brainchild, a board game that they can take home for both of those sacraments to do something fun and learn at the same time. For confirmation, we do it in high school, and they similarly have to go on a retreat. The retreat for kids is a little bit shorter. We go on a full weekend retreat, and we offer that twice a year. They pick one of those to go on. They participate in our high school program called Uprising. And then we do 3, we call them Spark Nights with sponsors. So 2 of those we host. One of them is on our campus, one is on Zoom, and then the third one they go and do on their own time. We give them the outline, the program for it, but they do it on their own time. So that's kind of the basic bones of the program.
These are fun ideas. This sounds so different from when I was a kid and going through these programs. I love that you've got retreats incorporated, game nights incorporated. These sound so much fun. So, what strategies have you found the most effective in engaging families before this prep begins?
So there's a couple of things we do for the elementary school families. Something we just started this year that I am really excited about is we created a Pray for Me sacrament board. And so we have that rolled out on the weekends when the kids and families are coming for small groups. And so once a family has committed to the sacrament program for the year, they come up to our Next Gen desk and they get to take their picture on a Polaroid and write their name on it. And then they hang it with a clothespin on the board. And so it's kind of a way to display like that they're, getting prepped and ready. And it's another way to kind of advertise of sorts the program for new families or families that haven't gone through the program yet. So that's super fun. We always just like to involve fun with kids. That's the best way
Yeah.
for them to learn. So even with our, we have a Zoom information night before the program begins to just kind of learn about the program, see if it's right for you this year and your family. And so this year we incorporated a Kahoot game, which is an online question and answer game that you can make to kind of, rather than just like sitting there and telling them all the dates and the information and all the things that you have to do, we made it into a fun game to kind of teach that information and get them excited for, like we teased the board game, we teased Chick-fil-A at the retreat to kind of get the kids excited and the parents excited.
That's so fun. Anytime you get Kahoot involved, I know that the kids get excited.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, I think our strategy starts with just having great programs that they're involved in before sacramental years. And we've tried really hard for a few years to have this strategy where it's birth to age 18. It's every age and every stage of your child's development. There's a program for them. And we just tell parents that we can't say it enough, that pipeline kind of continues. So it's not just formation for the year of the sacrament, but it's something that we offer all of the time. We kind of think of it like a river. It's always flowing and you can flow in and out of it, but it's always there for you. And we'd love for you to flow from start to finish, but wherever you come in and out is great.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so many things you said there I love. So the first is that we are starting with birth. We've got something for you from the time you are an infant all the way to really in through adulthood, but we're here every step of the way. But something else you said, Daniel, I think is so important that wherever you start in the river, even if you start a little bit later, we've got you. We can still help you with that. That's amazing. Now, a lot of parents out there are checking the box, like Father Michael had said. So, how do you ensure that your sacramental prep is more than just a requirement, but it becomes a meaningful experience for the kids and families?
So small groups is basically our answer for that. We want them, so we offer small groups starting in first grade. And so you can start getting your first sacraments in second grade, so reconciliation and communion. So we give them that ability to kind of start in small groups before even sacraments become available, to kind of get them engaged in a faith group and enjoy that before we have this other thing that they want to be doing. And it even starts way back in baptism. I know Maggie, who does baptism for infants, is already starting to tell families like, sacraments are not like a checkbox requirement. We want you to come when you're ready. So it could be second grade, it could be eighth grade. We want you to do it when you're ready. And so we're kind of planting that seed from the very, very beginning, like to just do it when you're ready, because that's when you're going to have the best experience.
That is amazing. Now, talk to us a little bit more since you brought up the small groups.
Mhm.
What role do the small groups, mentors, or sponsors play during this prep?
So a lot of them, a lot of the small group leaders who are leading groups where there, say, are a lot of second graders who are going to be doing sacramental prep, they also like to get involved in our sacramental prep program. And so they're seeing kids who are prepping for sacraments every single week. And then when we have our retreats and our workshops, they're there again. And so to have that second connection of like, oh wow, my small group leader really cares about me and cares about this. And it's so cool to get them to see them there and participating in the games and teaching me all about my sacraments. And so they're big role models. I mean, to see someone beside your parents or grandparents there who cares is such a big part of growing your faith.
Definitely. Daniel, could you talk a little bit about what role these play in confirmation?
Yeah, we have as part of the next gen course that we teach, we have one of the lessons is on our sacramental strategies. And we say, if you could only do one thing in your program, if a kid walked away with one thing from your confirmation program, what would that thing be? And for us, we realized a couple of years ago, we wanted them to walk away with relationships. So obviously, small groups are a part of that. We want them to have relationships with their peers, with their leaders, with the sponsor, who is hopefully somebody that's going to walk with them beyond just the sacrament, with their parents. But ultimately, all of those relationships, the point of them is that they know people who know God. Because sometimes for a young person, they need to know someone who knows God before they can know God themselves. And so introducing them to all of those relationships, hearing these faith conversations and the messages that they get, we want those to lead to these relationships so that they can know and have a relationship with the church and with our Lord. So that's kind of our underlying strategy in everything that we do. That's why we focus so much on small groups. It's why we try to make our big church seem personal and small in their experience, because we want them to walk away with relationships.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think that's so important, especially when you think about you want them to have to see what it's like from not just their parents, to see other adults and other kids have that relationship with God. And I just think that's so important. Thank you. Now, here's a question that I think a lot of people are wanting to know, and I've seen some things pop up in the chat already. So, how do you handle challenges like disengaged parents or families who are only here to check the box for sacraments?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that we face, and we're trying to change the narrative or the thought of the checkbox through things like starting at baptism, telling them do it when you're ready. And that's also why we try to kind of get ahead of it a little bit when we do like the first sacraments information nights, like telling them from the beginning, like, here's the dates for this year. But if you can't make it, totally okay. We want you to have a good experience. You know, we believe that our small group and sacrament program is worth it. And so we want you to be there in person for it. It's totally okay. And there's lots of, you know, third, fourth middle schoolers who are, you know, waiting, and we support that, you know. Um, but a lot of times, you know, it is that relationship, like Daniel was talking about, having conversations with families and parents, like later down the road, if they say they can commit and then, you know, they're kind of not really coming. And so, you know, it's emails, it's phone calls, and having conversations about it rather than just saying like, oh, sorry, you haven't been coming, goodbye. Like that's
Right.
not helpful, because a lot of the times the reasons why maybe families are disengaged is maybe the parents don't have as deep of a faith as um, enough to know, or like, you know, you're not always, it's not always just the kids that you're working on their
Right.
faith, it's the parents too. And so sometimes you're more so ministering to them than you are the kids.
Definitely. Definitely. Daniel, what about this for, what are you seeing, especially because you've got teens, so that's got to be even trickier.
Yeah, you never eliminate the challenge that that the parents have. And I think it's really important that we try to set the expectations early in the program, but then also throughout the program. You have to repeat things over and over again because you're in that world of sacraments, and parents just aren't all the time. They have all of these other things. And I think what Sage and I have been experiencing this year too is we have to protect our hearts, because it's really easy to have an angry parent and to feel like you're failing on some level. So in our communication and stuff, it is challenging sometimes. And we try to make the expectations clear so that when the conflict does arise with a disengaged family, you can put it back to the family that it's their decision. Here's the program, here's what we're offering. We don't want you to miss out on it. And your attendance hasn't been great, so that means you haven't gotten the experience this year. But if you can't make it work, that's okay. You can do it another time. We're not forcing anyone out. We don't even say no to people. We just say not yet or not right now. And that sounds really positive, but it is hard to hold that line,
Right.
and to just be consistent. And sometimes, you know what? You have to graduate your problems is a term that we use.
Yeah,
And we don't like to do that, but it's also you have to kind of discern when to let things go.
definitely. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about during the sacrament itself. So, how do you create an environment that makes the sacrament feel like a celebration rather than an obligation?
Fun. Fun. Celebrating is always fun. So for first communion and first reconciliation especially, because I think that one can be like a scary one, especially for kids. The mini retreats I think are like a huge win in our sacramental program. So it's a 3 hour retreat, an hour before mass, and then an hour after mass. Um, and we just like are celebrating the kids and the families the whole day long, like from the start of the retreat, like we're so excited you're here, this is going to be an awesome time, and we're playing games and engaging the families and kids with through skits and experiments, and we're going to mass, and Father Michael will shout out and say, hey everybody up in the balcony, like we're so glad you're here getting prepped for sacraments. And then we're coming back and we're eating dinner, and um, then we're sending them home with a board game to play. And it's just an overall positive experience where even parents come up after and they're like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. This isn't how it was when I was a kid. I wish we had this when I was a kid. And so I think that kind of builds that positive momentum to then continue that at home when they're doing their reading and their board game at home, so that it's not like, oh man, we gotta like read this book and check it off. And
Right.
hopefully it's more of a positive, experience in that way.
Definitely. Well, I love hearing how engaged and excited they are. Daniel,
Mhm.
I heard you've got a success story of a student or a family who had a transformational experience.
Well, we have lots of lots of stories like that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think um, there have been a lot of families that have come in hesitant about confirmation or first communion, and have become some of the strongest supporters. I had um, I don't, she probably won't mind me saying this, but Julia's from our Rebuild team's brother, Ryan, in my small group, who was a little bit of a terror when I had him in 8th grade and became one of our strongest student leaders because of his experiences leading up to confirmation, and is still involved even as a college student now, coming and taking photos and being part of our teams. But I think it was the consistency over the years too. And I was just going to add about the engagement. We view sacraments as incarnational. There's something that needs to be experienced in person. You can't do a sacrament over digital discipleship as much as we like to try to make things available online. Sacraments have to be experienced in person. So that's what we try to make our programs reflect that too. There's some elements that we can do online as part of it, but the experiences really have to be incarnational.
For sure. Julia, you'll have to let your brother know that Daniel called him out during this workshop. Well, okay, let's talk a little bit about after the sacraments, because this is where people really want to know how we can help them. So we know families disengage. It happens in every parish. How do you work to keep them connected to the parish after sacraments?
So I think something that you have to look at is like, where do you want them to be connected? Because I mean, ideally you have a perfect family who comes in and they come to mass every weekend and they're serving and they're in small groups and they're going on missions trips and all the things, which would be great. And we do have families who are like that, but maybe if you want to just focus on like one thing, like maybe it is small groups and you want to have kids engaged in small groups, making sure that that's part of your sacramental program is super important. So whatever you want them engaged in, have a little taste of it in your sacramental prep, because they're going to come for that, and you want them to be involved. So that's what we do with that's why we have like mass as part of our retreats. Is we want families to come to mass, and so they go to mass together as a family at the retreat at least twice. They're going to be coming. We want them in small groups, so the kids go to small groups. And so kind of, yeah, think about where do you want them engaged and how can you build that into your sacramental program and make it a good experience so that they want to come back.
And we
So
want
good.
them to be connected in their age groups. So we have programs already that run concurrently to the sacramental programs so that they're in that small group. And the idea with our programs is they continue with that small group for year to year. So Quest is for elementary school, Resurrections grades 5 through 8, and Uprising is grades 9 through 12. The ideal is they have that same group starting in 1st grade, and they have leaders that move along with them for at least a period of time, a couple of years throughout, elementary school. And we have that happen a lot. So that consistency is where we're kind of pointing them. Just as a follow-up for confirmation too, we have a student leadership team that is that next step for a lot of students. And as part of their confirmation, we ask them to try out a ministry or missions opportunity at Nativity. So that's kind of our way of working in the service. And so it's a little bit of a hurdle to like get cleared and trained to do something like that. But if they can do that as part of their confirmation prep, they will have at least tried it, and maybe they enjoy it and serve in that role beyond their confirmation.
I love that you shared about the student leadership team too, because I think that is such a great way to get the kids involved, because we know that the little kids love looking up to the big kids, and the big kids have their cups just filled when they're able to help serve the little kids. I think that's incredible. I wish we could keep going on, but we need to allow some time for Q&A. So we have some questions here. So the first question is, how do you handle older children who are delayed in receiving the sacraments?
So we're lucky enough to have Maggie, who she does baptism and sacramental prep for many ages and stages. And so for First Communion and reconciliation, we have a group of middle and high schoolers that she does a similar program alongside of when we do our younger kids. Because a lot of times, especially since COVID, we're seeing like a family with a second, third, and fourth grader, but also a middle and high schooler who haven't received. And so it makes it easier for them to be able to do both at once instead of like two separate prep programs going on at the same time. Um, and we do try and write like our retreats for maybe up to 5th or 6th grade and have it still be appropriate. It's similar to Time Travelers, the Liturgy of the Word program. And so that's kind of also for all young, elementary and middle schoolers as well. So we kind of try to be adaptable in that.
Thank you. Okay, another question we have here, and this one is, small groups are for the students. Are parents required to be in a small group too?
They are not officially required to be in a small group. However, there's kind of unofficial small groups that form while their kids are in small groups. We have our parent lounge, and so they're kind of there hanging out and talking to each other anyway. So it's not an official group. We do actually have a few dads groups that are official at that time. But that is something that is a great idea and that we'd love to work towards officially, but we don't have official parent groups. But we do, in our mini retreats for reconciliation and confirmation, we do have a parent breakout at points during the retreat where they get into small groups and talk about how they're going to prep their kids for the sacraments and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have time for just one more question, then I want to allow time for Father Michael to come back and help us close out. So if there's any other questions, you can still put them in and we will bring them in and answer the rest in week 3. So here's a question. How do you work with or guide our Catholic school families that just assume sacramental prep should happen at school? So I'm sure you've got Catholic school kids there. How do you help them?
We do. So this is interesting because I've noticed we have more students receiving confirmation than we have kids receiving First Communion. And I thought that was a really odd dynamic. And then I realized we have a ton of Catholic schools kids that do their First Communion and reconciliation in their schools. So it makes sense that we would have less. They can't do their confirmation in school. And so that is kind of an odd dynamic. There are a few, I think, middle schoolers that do it. But we again, like it's the consistency that we're going for from when they're young. We're trying to build a program not just that's centered around sacraments, but that sacraments are integrated into. And I think the more that families can understand that, the more that they understand the need for it beyond just what their kids are receiving at school. It doesn't, I mean, and we get the question all the time of like, my kid is in school, do they have to do the same prep process as a kid that's in public school or that's homeschooled? And the answer is yes. We want you to experience this as a community, to have pure relationships, and to do it together, so that you feel connected to your parish beyond just the school life. So those are some of the strategies, just briefly, that we go for with that question.
Those are great. Thank you. Well, Daniel Sage, thank you for taking the time to be here and pour into this community today. We're so grateful for you.
Great to
Of
be here.
course.
Father Michael, do you have any final thoughts for us before we go into discussion groups today?
Well, I'll just finish where I started. I think it's a question of clear communication from the pastor and the parish leadership, an open and generous heart when it comes to families and parents who can be challenging sometimes and difficult to communicate with, a small group structure for adults and for young people, and a love of our families too, I think, needs to be a part of the equation. We're working toward personal encounter with Jesus Christ. That's the bottom line on what this is all about. For a program to be transformational and not just educational, we've got to be pursuing personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love that you talked about we want it to be relational and transformational. I think that was a mic drop moment right there, Father Michael. Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This week, we're going to see you in those discussion groups, so stick around. And just remember, Sage just might be in your discussion group, so you'll have the opportunity to chat with her in a small group. And we will see you right back here after discussion groups.